Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morgan, Rough Motor City Madmouth. Have a really dynamite crew tonight, and I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and now we have it. So, welcome George Eichorn to 108 Stitches Baseball Talk for the first time. Good evening, George.
Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Happy to be on.
And Rick Curti. We all know that your shtick is Charlotte all the time, but we're not going to give you too much of that now because we have other things to do. But anyways, Rick Curti, one of our co-hosts. Welcome back, Rick.
Thank you.
And Eric Katz, a.k.a. Concrete Dump. Okay, Eric, glad to have you back.
Thanks, Scott. Good to be back. Missed it.
And last but not least, L Square, Lander Talks. Lou Landers. Welcome back, Lou.
All I got to say is go Leafs, go. Back to baseball.
Let me tell you, that was a pretty convincing win over the Lightning. They looked awfully good doing it. Didn't Austin Matthews, I think, score a pair of goals last night?
He did, and Mitch Marner went over 1,000 days without playoff goals and finally got one last night too. So the key for the Leafs, I think, in the playoffs is Matthews and Marner still being able to score because in the past they haven't, and having some grit, which they finally have too because they've been bullied for years.
Mm-hmm. I was watching that game. It looked awfully good. They reduced the Lightning to very little last night. We'll see whether the Lightning rebound, but a good.
The Lightning were sprinkled the other game.
Yeah,
right?
They looked too good. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, I only have 4 subjects I want to talk about tonight, but boy, they are heavy. Just so you know, the title of this show is going to be The Great, the Bad, and the Ugly. And when you listen to this and watch it, you'll understand why. And for a lot of you folks out there that want to watch or listen to 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, you can do so by subscribing to iHeartRadio for the audio, or you can go ahead and subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. Then you get to look at all 5 of us. So with that said, okay, the Great, the 500 home run club, 3,000 hits club. And at that time, we'll talk about Miguel Cabrera when he recorded that milestone. I'm going to go over this exclusive club. There'll be a couple of asterisks in there, as you guys will find out. You got Henry Aaron with 755 home runs, 3,771 hits. Albert Pujols, 681 home runs, 3,308 hits. Willie Mays, the Say Hey Kid, 660 home runs, 3,293 hits. Eddie Murray, 504 home runs, 3,255. And if you want the asterisk, which we know Rick Curti thrives on asterisks, okay, you got Alex Rodriguez, 696 home runs and 3,115 hits. Of course, there's Interstate 696 in Michigan, right? George, which we know it all too well. We call it the Ruther Highway. Had to get that in there. And you got Rafael Palmeiro, who knows how to put on a good act in the courtroom or in the front of the Senate. Okay, with his old hand signals, 569 home runs, 30-20. And, of course, at the time, you had Miguel Cabrera, 502 home runs, 3,000 hits. I know the total has definitely changed. With that said, okay, George, you had a chance to see that milestone, but there's only one little bit of a problem. When you applied for your press credential, the game was rained out, and Miguel got it on the next night. You talk about anybody that had bad luck, you definitely had it.
Yeah, Scott, you had to rub it in, boy. I've been fortunate to see 2 World Series, an All-Star game, a Justin Verlander no-no, and the day they opened up Comerica Park among my highlights. But boy, my planning was terrible for this one. I was all set, going up to the press box, enjoying a camaraderie with the writers and the broadcasters. And in fact, I met one of Miguel's news persons came all the way in from Venezuela. He was here to track the magic moment. And Mother Nature had another plan, though, for the Eichorn. It was rained out. And I could not make it the next day. I had commitments I had. There was no way I could make it on that Saturday for that day game. They played, as you know, a split doubleheader the next day. But Miguel took care of business and sent the fans into a frenzy. Over 37,000, one of the largest non-opening day crowds at Comerica Park in years and years when he set the record. But me, I missed it, Scott. You're right, but I'm happy for him. He's had such a struggle the last several years with injuries. I'm so happy that he did it in front of the home folks.
All the Tigers are paying him a lot of money to try to keep him around for the milestones as well. You knew that with the contract that Mike Ilitch went out there and handed to him. You would hope you had a little bit more productivity. I know the rest of our crew here has talked about those longer contracts, right, Lou? Where they're not very good on the back end. And we know that Miguel Cabrera's contract on the back end had been good. But if there's a silver lining to the whole thing, he did get the milestone wearing the old English D, both the 500 and the 3,000. So there's no doubt. And unfortunately, a lot of those northern stadiums don't happen to have domes. I don't have that problem here. I'm wearing a Miami Marlins hat. Of course, why am I wearing that tonight? I get the Diamondbacks and the Marlins tomorrow over at Marlins Park. But, I can only imagine if you would have had a dome stadium to have at Miller Park, but they don't happen to have it in Michigan. So, but, at least this is a good story that if you had any luck at all, it was bad luck to get that milestone. I even saw a no-hitter over at Marlins Park. So, Lou, how do you put into perspective for Miguel Cabrera to be in such an incredible club like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, so many players play Major League Baseball. So few actually have the opportunity to come close to those numbers, let alone put up those numbers. And I remember young Miggy as an outfielder with the Miami Marlins. He was a lot more thin, a lot more athletic, and he was one of the key cogs in that miraculous World Series victory for the Marlins that really nobody saw coming entering the year or even midway through the year. Him being called up kind of gave them that extra jolt that they needed, and he really just took off from there. Sad day when the Marlins traded him to the Tigers, but lucky for you Tigers fans and all Tigers fans out there getting to witness what he's done for more than a decade now there in Detroit. And I mean, you can't really put any more words to it. What a guy has done is incredible. And I would say him and Pujols collectively are probably two of the greatest hitters of their generation, if not the two greatest hitters of their generation, and not linked to steroids like some of the other guys that have been mentioned.
Well, it's funny how you say that World Series. I happened to be down here and covered the Giants and the Marlins game when Pudge Rodriguez had that big play at the plate, so it was unbelievable. That Marlins team.
Well, that was the Steve Bartman year, remember?
Yeah.
Perhaps the Marlins don't even get to the World Series if that doesn't happen.
You guys just won that series because the Yankees bats capped out.
Well, the Yankees World Series was Aaron Boone's home run, basically.
Yes, it was.
They basically were like, oh, we beat Boston in that crazy game and series.
Well, the bats died in that World Series. That was the biggest thing. Their bats died at the wrong time, and so obviously the Marlins jumped all over that.
That was an incredible
Josh
series.
Beckett, though, and Dontrelle
Willis.
and Pavano. Dontrelle Willis. I mean,
the D-train.
Very good rotation.
That small period of time where he was actually a really dominant pitcher who had that funky rotation, was striking out at an unbelievable clip.
Well, amazingly, when they had the baseball winter meetings over in Nashville, he was the throw-in. The Tigers wanted him bad. The only way you get Miggy, you had to take him too. And the Tigers couldn't straighten him out, could they? I know they tried really hard to straighten him out.
It was still worth it. I would take a Dontrelle Willis 10 times to get one version of Miggy.
You can't. You can't really blame. I can't blame the Tigers there. Dontrelle Willis, I believe, was just coming off a Cy Young year, and obviously Miguel Cabrera was just coming into his own at that point. wasn't quite there yet, but you knew he was going to be special. But obviously Dontrelle Willis was coming off a Cy Young year. I mean, did it work out? No, but it doesn't always work out. Well, heck, what happened with the Marlins? They just essentially got a pile of garbage.
Well, it's funny how you say that. I love, what, Rick? Doesn't Katz come up with some pretty interesting brash stuff? I mean, a pile of garbage because of all the players that were involved in that deal. Miguel Cabrera is the only one that's active. I mean, Cameron Maybin was considered a good prospect, and Andrew Miller.
Cameron Maybin turned out to be an okay ball player.
He's a pretty good broadcaster too now.
Yes, I mean, Cameron Maybin turned into a decent player, but obviously, I don't think it was with the Marlins. I think it ended up being with I believe the Atlanta Braves, where he was, where he actually started making an impact. I think also the San Diego Padres too.
And in Detroit, he was in Detroit.
Yep, which he turned into an okay ball player, because he ended up coming back to Detroit, later on. But
so Andrew Miller was in that deal.
Yeah.
believe. But Andrew
so-
Miller didn't develop into anything much later on, and he wasn't the starting pitcher people thought he would be. He ended up being a reliever, but he did
a really
nothing
good reliever.
he did nothing for the Marlins at that time.
Yeah, you're right.
He ended
You
up-
know,
I mean, Andrew Miller ended up being a pretty
Zilch.
good reliever, actually.
elite.
Yeah, Lou,
Yeah.
if I remember right, he went out there and came from the University of North Carolina, if I
Yes.
remember correctly.
Yeah,
So,
he came from UNC. I
but
remember
yeah,
him
I
with
mean,
the Yankees, and he was terrific. He was part of that run DMC bullpen the Yankees had.
yeah, I met Cameron Maybin. He's a nice kid. I've talked to him a couple times during spring training.
Oh,
but,
very sweet. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a sweet guy. But yeah, I mean, but the thing was though, why I say it's pile guard. I'm not saying like all of them turned out to be bad ball players. That's not my point. My point is, it didn't happen with the Marlins. It happened with other teams.
yeah. Well, Rick,
What's
I guess,
interesting though, guys, is Miggy came into the league in 2003, and it wasn't
Yeah.
a full season. He was traded in 2007. He already had 842 hits in the first 4.5 years or so. So he was really pacing. Like he was averaging just under 200 a season at that point.
You knew he was going to be a special player. I mean, I remember a young Miggy in the minors. You knew the guy was going to be special. He just, he was just, I felt like everything that you couldn't get him out. I mean, you knew he was going to be a very special ball player, which obviously it's great that he got 3,000 hits because there's a lot of Hall of Famers who didn't get 3,000 hits because 3,000 hits is probably the hard. I'm sure you can ask any ball player now who hits 3,000. It's probably the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
that and the triple crowns, right? Rick Curti. I mean, triple crowns don't grow on trees either.
Yeah,
I mean,
he was the
people
first to
forget
win
Miguel
it since
Cabrera
Corey
won that.
Strimsky. So, I mean, that I never thought I'd see a triple crown in my lifetime. That's something I've always wanted to see.
Yep.
And when I talked about it, people thought I was talking about horse racing. And I'm like, no, there's a triple crown in baseball that it's not done a lot. Ted Williams and Hornsby have won it twice.
Mickey
And,
Mantle.
the fun thing about Cabrera is that he joined another list. He's only the third player to have 500 home runs, 3,000 hits, and a 300 batting average. Willie Mays and Hank Aaron are the other two.
That's right.
Miguel Cabrera, before becoming a power, he's probably the most put together ball player of our lifetime. Like being able to do what he's been able to do. You don't find Miguel Cabreras that often. A guy who can literally do it all. Heck, had he stayed skinny, he might have set some stolen base records.
Now, maybe you guys know this or don't. I believe you probably might, Lou. Isn't Cabrera the first Venezuelan guy to do it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was. So that's incredible. It's all right. Yeah, one Venezuelan player.
In fact, at the game that he did it, Scott, then guys, you had a Venezuelan catcher, you had a Venezuelan pitcher, and you had his buddy Iglesias at shortstop. I mean, you couldn't have written the script any better for him with his native Venezuelans on the field at the same time.
You're talking about Jose Iglesias, if I remember.
Jose, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they were
No,
teammates
that's
for a while.
okay. He played for the Tigers at one point or another. So that's interesting. So, any closing thoughts about Miguel Cabrera? We're going to just go around the horn with it.
I'd say, what better way to do it? A guy who's played the game right, a guy who's been so much fun to watch, a guy that, it's very rare that you get a put together hitter like Miguel Cabrera who can hit for power and average. I think, it's very rare that you find those guys. I know Mickey Mantle was one of them. I know Ted Williams could hit home runs and do that whenever he felt like it. But it's not very often that you find a guy who's so well put together. Heck, I remember being at a White Sox game. It was bases loaded, 1 out, and you just knew. And Miguel Cabrera's up. You knew he was going to make some fireworks, like with bases loaded and no outs in that situation.
Rick, some closing thoughts on Cabrera before we move on to the next topic.
That's a phenomenal player, first ballot Hall of Famer, and him and Pujols are like two of the greatest right-handed hitters of our generation, and it's going to be a long, long time since we see someone like a Pujols or a Cabrera again. I mean, and the Triple Crown, it's never going to happen again, not especially with these guys hitting 250.
Vladimir Guerrero Jr. could definitely do it.
Vlad Guerrero Jr. I think has the best chance at it. Obviously now
he almost did it last year. He actually was very close last year, if I'm not mistaken.
He's gonna do it. I believe he's gonna do it. Like I think I'm gonna go on a lark here. I know his old man was a great ball player, a Hall of Famer, and very deserving of it. But I think overall, though, with how I think Guerrero has an opportunity, Guerrero Jr. has the opportunity to be better than his old man.
That's interesting. All right.
Maybe.
Lou, what are your thoughts about Cabrera? Because we have a lot of good topics tonight.
Well, I kind of hit on it already when you came over to me, but yeah, just to share the same sentiments as I already did. He was, is still a great ball player. Obviously, the power zapped now from him, but he's up there in age and just good on him. Glad he got to that milestone, and one day he'll be in Cooperstown.
No doubt.
George, well, you've been there throughout.
I mean, we've been blessed in Detroit. Ty Cobb, Al Kaline, Miguel Cabrera, all of them outstanding hitters, all of them over 3,000 hits. It's a joy to see him. You're right. He, of our era, what a great hitter he was. And what a fleecing by the Tigers in that trade, as you guys mentioned. And also the fact that Jim Leland and Dave Dombrowski, GM and manager, also made their way back to the Tigers.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Cabrera, no World Series in Detroit. That hurts. That hurt our former owner, who's now dead, Mike Ilitch. It hurt the fans. St. Louis knocked him out. San Francisco knocked Detroit out. And that's the sad part, is that there's no ring for Cabrera here as a Tiger.
Yeah, well, all at the expense of the Miami Marlins, Florida Marlins, whatever you want to call them. So when I talked about the bad, okay, now we're really going to talk about the bad. So we had to lead off with something positive with Miggy, but Trevor Bauer gets a 324-game suspension. His Dodger days, it's safe to say, are over. I think his lawyer, Rachel Luba's got a lot of work to do to try to get him out of this jackpot that he's in. But you know what? I want to lead off with you, Eric, because you didn't have a chance to come on it. Then we're going to let everybody take a crack at it. But Trevor Bauer's situation is, boy, this is 324 games, 2 years. That's pretty heavy stuff.
I mean, they didn't suspend A-Rod for that long, if that tells you anything. This isn't the first time that Trevor Bauer has crossed the line. He's, I've got no problem with a ball player who likes to open his mouth. I really don't. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of words to really put into the disappointment that he is. I mean, was he a great pitcher? Absolutely. And he won a Cy Young, 2 years ago. But bro, you had it all going for you. You were about a year, I think you were a couple years away from being able to cash in again on the free agent market. There is, you might get it docked for 1 year if you're lucky, but everybody knows but either way though, that's not going to take away the stain that he self-inflicted on his career. I mean, at this point right now, I think he's getting what he deserves because, Trevor Bauer just did something so egregious that, it's hard for anybody to really feel bad for him, even for the biggest Trevor Bauer lovers out there.
Rick?
Well, his career is over. It's done. That's all he'll be remembered for. It's just interesting that he gets suspended for 2 years and yet he's never been arrested. He's never had any, it's just, like I said, in today's world, you're guilty till proven innocent. And so it's interesting that he's never been arrested. He's not going to trial or anything like that. So, but in this world today, like I said, you're guilty till proven innocent. So, but 2 years is a long time. His career is over. And even if let's say it was all made up, let's say it was all a mistake and he's 100% innocent, his career is over. So it's a talent. It's a waste of talent that got lost, and it's a shame.
Your arm starts to die when you get to your mid-30s, and obviously you can throw in the cages all you want, but if you're not getting live game action, you're going to struggle.
Yeah, he's done. He's not going to be back in the majors again.
I think they're doing this because of because he screwed up the previous couple of times. I think it's just based on
he's not very well popular in Major League Baseball because you see other players doing much, much worse, and they don't sign $250 million contract guarantees like a Deshaun Watson.
Well, here's the thing. This isn't the first time Trevor Bauer has gotten in trouble off the field. Has he been arrested? No, but still. He was, very, very much teetering toward that line. This isn't the first time that Bauer has has done something that's caused controversy in his space and in his community. It's really not.
Well, I think that when it comes to domestic violence, you're not going to get much support from not too many people, is what I'm saying. So he's getting what, like you said, his reputation, things that have happened in the past, the roughness, the violence, the things that the ladies that are accusing him described him of doing. It's harsh. I don't think they're going to reduce it to 1 year. I mean, maybe he might do a year and a half, but I don't think they're going to come down that much for one whole season. Although the appeals process is going to take some time. He's shot. He's shot, man. He shot his career, and it's a shame.
Yeah, I don't think it's very fair, the length of the suspension. I mean, what he is being accused of doing is obviously terrible, but you look at some big name players or just well-known players who have had similar instances, who were actually charged and arrested. Aroldis Chapman in 2016, 30 games. Jose Reyes was, a star. He suspended 51 games. Jairus Familia, Roberto Ozuna, Addison Russell, Odubel Herrera, Julio Urias, Domingo Herman. These are all guys who were accused and were fined, suspended, and they all came back to Major League Baseball in no more than 75 games. The longest one to all those guys was Ozuna, 75 games. He's now out of the league again, Ozuna, but he did come back. Addison Russell out of the league again, but he did come back from it. It just seems a little bit of a stretch to be suspending him for 324 games in a situation where there's actually less proof and no arrest in his situation compared to all the other guys I just named, who are all just as big names at the time of their suspensions and I guess situations they got themselves into. So I do think it's kind of BS in the sense of the length of it. But of course, he has to be suspended just based on the fact that he's been accused of doing something wrong. And I really hope that he didn't do all of those things, because it's horrible if someone had to go through the things he's being accused of. But Major League Baseball is overstepping, in my opinion. It's not their responsibility to hand out justice like this. It's the courts and the the police and the courts' responsibility, not Major League Baseball's.
Lou, you have to understand, though, that times have really changed. At one point, prior to those guys that you had just named, they hadn't done anything. They hadn't had any past controversial antics off the field.
Urias and Herman were 2019. It was only 2 years before the Bauer one. So it's
you have to understand, though, that the times really have changed. I mean, that's the problem that Trevor Bauer is dealing with now. Also, Trevor Bauer has a horrendous reputation in baseball. And it's just, unfortunately, though, all sports league divvy it out based on punishment. For example, when the video surfaced of, this is a different sport, but when the video surfaced of Joe Mixon and what he did to that one woman at Oklahoma, and Bob Stoops suspended him for the year, at the time that was, okay. But when we moved a little forward and the video surfaced, looking back on it, you had to, now you'd have to cut them loose. That's just the times have just changed on it, and society itself is frowning upon it and vilifying the people even more. I mean, social media doesn't help, but the problem is the times have changed. At one point,
what about Marcell Ozuna though? That happened last year. He's back already playing for the defending world champions.
Did Marcell Ozuna have any off the? Did Marcell Ozuna previously have any antics that would sully his reputation?
I have no idea.
Very
possibly.
He didn't.
He's
Trevor
not a big name. That's why.
Trevor Bauer has. Trevor Bauer had a little spat on social media that you could easily call cyberbullying, and he's also done a bunch of other controversial things. His reputation was already in shambles. This essentially knocked open the glass ceiling. So Trevor Bauer was already on thin ice as it was with the commissioner of baseball.
Sure, but who is who is the commissioner of baseball? Who is Major League Baseball to just decide when to hand down a tougher punishment? Nothing that Trevor Bauer did prior to this situation was illegal, was something that he needed to be reprimanded for. They're just deciding to be their own justice system.
Well,
I'm not saying he deserves better. I'm saying based on precedent that has been set, he does deserve better.
I mean, I agree, and fortunately, our courts in our country today, they are not like Major League sports courts. Otherwise, we'd all be walking into a courtroom guilty until proven innocent. But the league is well in its right. The problem is, though, both leagues now are a lot more sensitive to outside noise, more than they ever had before. Obviously, we saw what happened with the NFL with Roger Goodell completely cracking when he only suspended Ray Rice at the time for 2 games. I think MLB is not trying to run into a situation like that again, where essentially Roger Goodell gave some of these guys a slap on the wrist, and then the PR nightmares that ensue. I mean, nightmares that happen. MLB is really trying to prevent that from happening and taking its reputation a lot more seriously than
give him a year though. My turn, him.
My turn, Lou.
Blackball him, dude.
The thing is, though, the society's changed. Sports leagues can no longer be confined to a box outside of the noise. We've seen this happen over the years. They are no longer immune to the noise. And the fact of the matter is, MLB could very well lose money if they were to let Trevor Bauer come back in. I mean,
they don't have to. The owners can agree not to bring it back. I mean, it's happened to Colin Kaepernick for different reasons in the NFL. Him being suspended doesn't the two aren't necessarily the same. He doesn't. He can be suspended for a year, 162 games, 140 games, and the owners can still all agree not to bring him back into Major League Baseball. And
who's going to sign? Who in their right mind is going to sign a pitcher who's entering probably his age 33 season and hasn't pitched in 2 years? The guy's arms is going to be so out of whack that
no one's going to sign him anyway because they don't want the PR nightmare. Right. So to suspend him for this long,
MLB doesn't like.
They don't need to.
That's why MLB is doing this, because they're caving into the pressure of today of like I said, you're guilty till proven innocent.
They could suspend him for 81 games though, like everyone else has been suspended, and he still won't be signed. The Dodgers weren't going to play him this year, regardless of what happened. They'd already said he's not pitching for us. So the PR nightmare, to me, it's just setting a bad example of we're doing whatever we want.
It's inconsistent.
There's no rules. There's no logic. There's no consistency behind it. So someone else will do something this year or next year, and they'll get 30 games.
Mm-hmm. They gotta have the. They gotta base it off what they do with steroids. Like, one strikes one. Using it once is X amount of games, which that deal escapes me at the moment. But then I think
it was 80 and 160, and then like a lifetime or something.
Or at least for the season. Which I think that'd be an okay rule to go by, but I think they did the 2-year deal was so they can let the Dodgers off the hook for the salary that they're paying them. I think that's why they did it. It's easier for them. If you suspend a guy for a long period of time, you can very easily prove the morals clause in your contract, and the Dodgers are off the hook, which granted, the Dodgers could very well easily eat that money. But if they don't have to, they can easily put that money somewhere else.
All right, let me point out a couple of things here. Number one, I love the dialogue between Eric and Lou. To me, this is better than Ali and Frazier, folks. So if you watch these two guys, you know what? If I ever keep quiet during a long period of time, I got Lou and Eric going back and forth. This is just awesome, baby, and Dick Vitale. But I will tell you this. Trevor Bauer is not afraid to take shots at the commissioner. He's been in odds with him back and forth and ridiculing him. So to tell you that the commissioner doesn't have a little bit of an edge here, that he doesn't mind sticking it to him when he can, he won't. Commissioner Rob Manfred would never admit it, but you can't sit here and take shots at the commissioner, number one, and expect to be handed any kind of leniency. That's item number one. Number two, though, I'm going to say this. I'm with you, Lou, on this, okay? I don't believe unless you've been criminally charged that you should get a suspension of this magnitude. I don't believe that you do. If a guy is criminally charged, then drop the hammer. I understand punishment. I get it. But criminal charges, I mean, look at Deshaun Watson for a minute, okay? You know what? Everybody was waiting for this whole thing to play out. But when the criminal charges were no longer there, then there was a demand and there was a market for them. Now, Eric, I am glad that you brought up Ray Rice, because I was thinking about him when you were talking about it. But the problem was with Ray Rice's situation is you had video on it and it looked really bad. And as a result, you know, he paid the price for that as well. But to watch each and every one of you guys make incredible points, because you both were, and it was just great to watch. I'm still going to lean more toward Lou a little bit. He has not been criminally charged.
Right.
And therefore, I think that suspension's a little bit too big as a result.
Stop making up your own rules.
Yeah,
That's the problem I have with it.
You got to have,
Be
I mean, I do
consistent.
agree. It's got to be a consistent thing. Like, it's got to be like what they do with steroids. You got to have something consistent there. That way, everybody's following the same rules, not Rob Manfred pulling out of his behind. That's not what I wanted to say, ladies and gentlemen. He's pulling it out of his behind, saying, this person gets X amount of games, this person gets X amount of games, which, that's been Rob's, biggest problem. And that's why Rob Manfred, I believe, is probably the worst commissioner in sports right now.
Yeah. And my defense is not of Trevor Bauer. I want to make that clear. I don't think you guys thought that, but I'm not defending Trevor Bauer. I'm defending just the future of the game and just the fact that there should be some damn consistency. And why is one guy getting 30 games for the same crime, and a crime that actually has proof and video and all sorts of, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, all you want, Lou, is just consistency in the system. If it's 100 games, it's 100
I feel like
games.
it's like calling balls and strikes. There's no consistency.
I mean, he would have been arrested already if he did these egregious things. I mean, this is like Ted Bundy right here. He would have been arrested right away. He hasn't been arrested at all, and this has been going on for 2 years.
They wouldn't even grant the restraining order.
It's
filed for a restraining order, they wouldn't grant it.
Because Major League Baseball is being pressured by society, and we have to do something because we don't want to be like the NFL, and we don't want a bunch of groups protesting us and saying that we have a bunch of wife beaters on our team. So let's drop the hammer on them. And by the way, Trevor Bauer's a jerk anyway. So he's so let's get rid of him.
An a-hole, regardless of whether he did this or
I can't
didn't
stand
do it.
Trevor Bauer, but what is happening to him is just.
You could call him probably. I mean, I can probably relate the two. You could probably call him the Jim Morrison of Major League Baseball, except a little less crazy.
Interesting. I love listening to these guys.
The Ted Bundy in baseball.
But you're right. You can't give one guy a 20-game suspension, 30-game suspension, and let him come back, and then you're inconsistent. It's all about like you said, what's going on in society right now.
Right.
You hit it right on the head, Eric. And times have changed. I agree.
Yeah, again, I'll reiterate what both of you guys are saying. I think Eric and Lou are both right in their own ways, okay? Again, I emphasize the legal system, says what it is. If you haven't been charged, it's one thing. If you've been charged, that's where you set your penalties. And you know what, Lou? You're 100% right, okay? It's about the integrity of the game and not damaging what the game is all about. And when you have a reputation like Bauer has, then it's like truth or consequences. So, again, if you've been charged, you get a stiffer penalty. If you haven't been charged, then I think the penalty should be a little bit more reduced.
I wish they would just let the legal process play out and just let all that happen before they start handing down the penalty, because obviously this here in America we have something we like to call due process and trial by our peers. It's a wonderful thing, I pray that people don't have to go through it, but if they do, it's a great thing. We get our day in court to plead our side of the problem, and hopefully it all works out. Problem is, essentially with MLB, you're guilty until you walk into the room. I mean, that's just the way it is. And I think Major League Baseball, like the NFL, I think MLB is trying to just show that they're the bigger shield than the NFL.
Yeah.
All right, I do. All right, Lou. What I want you to do now, I know we talked about it yesterday. I want you to go over the gist of the roster reduction from 28 to 26 that occurred yesterday, and then we'll go to the final subject as well. So go ahead, Lou. Take it away. I want that clarity on this subject and your opinions about how this change affects baseball and whether it's a good change. It's all yours.
All
Lou.
right. Well, obviously, it used to be just a 25-man roster. They bumped it up to 26-man, I think, 3 years ago or so. This year, to begin the season until today, actually, the rosters were increased to 28 to kind of make up for the fact that spring training was too short, give teams extra roster spots for injuries, giving guys rest and whatnot. I kind of liked seeing 28 guys on the roster. I understand, obviously, they couldn't make that change right now. It would have to be something that would have to be done in the collective bargaining agreement. But I just wanted to kind of get everyone's thoughts on if they liked when it went from 25 to 26, if they liked when it went to 28, and if they'd like to maybe see it up at 28 at some time or back at 26 where it is currently, the pros, the cons, whatever it might be. So George is our guest. Why don't we start with him?
Go ahead, George.
Well, I think for a lot of teams, it's a necessity. You mentioned, Lou, that they did it obviously because of this late start and the lack of a full spring training. The pitchers, obviously, a lot of them are not ready. A lot of the hitters aren't ready, especially a lot of those hitters in the Detroit Tigers lineup. Candelaria and Scope, and there's so many Tiger hitters that are way behind. All I'm saying is that Major League Baseball, there are plenty of good, talented guys in the minors that are right on the border, right on the fringe, as you guys know, of making it into the big leagues. And so this gives them that opportunity. That's what I like. It gives these guys that are on the fringe or on the border, let's say, not fringe players, but they don't get that opportunity when we have only 26. So I'm going to say thumbs up. I'd like to see it at 28.
I like to see it at 30 even. I mean, I have no issue with it. Bigger benches. And also, my issue with it could be twofold. It kind of, I can see it from both sides. One, it could reward teams that can spend more money because those teams typically have more depth, and that could be an unfair advantage. At the same time, there's teams like the Rays who have tons of depth who don't spend a lot of money. So you want to reward the teams that are deeper, that have more arms to utilize, have more defensive type of replacements, guys that are great base runners, whatever it might be. But you also don't want to open it up too much because the teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees, Red Sox, Braves, Angels, etc., have so much more money than everybody else. They have the ability to sign more players, be deeper on their roster, and that gives them an advantage. So it depends kind of how you look at it, who you root for, maybe if you're biased or not. But that's one of the things that I do like about it is that these teams with the depth are rewarded. You saw the Yankees have one of the best records in baseball in April. I put a lot of that into the fact that they have a really deep pitching staff. Great bullpen, lots of great arms, and it kind of helped them to that record. Now we'll see what happens now that they've lost 2 pitchers from their roster, because they came into the season, I think, with 16 pitchers, which has never been done before, obviously, and just 12 hitters. So we'll have to see. That's just one example, but it does kind of make a difference. Some of these teams only have 3 or 4 relievers they can rely upon. Others have a lot more. So when you have all these extra roster spots, with the game being the way it is today, 5 innings from a pitcher is considered good. Go to the bullpen's taken over. Teams with good bullpens and a lot more arms in their bullpen because of expanded rosters are naturally going to be better.
Yeah, good point.
Rick?
Yeah, I like it too. I'm actually up. I actually like the 30. I'm always there for opportunities for other players to try to get into the big leagues. You know, last week I was in Gastonia for the Atlantic League of Professional Baseball, and there's some good talent there, and they're just waiting for that opportunity to get signed to like a minor league contract and hopefully make it to Major League Baseball. And a lot of these guys were there and are now with the Atlantic League, and I've always want to see more other people get that opportunity to get into Major League Baseball. And I think with an expanded roster, that will help that. And every team needs pitching. No matter if you're good It don't matter if they're the Yankees or the Reds right now. Everybody needs pitching. And especially hitting, like George said, the hitting right now has been atrocious. So it's
it
all
might
about
also,
opportunities.
Rick, do you think it might also help keep pitchers healthier because you have more pitchers available? You might not be using guys 5 times a week out of the bullpen. That's going to wear and tear on their arms, one, from an injury standpoint, but two, by late August, September, during that stretch run, a lot of these guys are worn out. You see a lot of these relievers, their first 50 innings of the season pitch excellent. Then they really tail off that last 15 to 20 towards the end of the season. That might not happen if you have an extra reliever or two to take away some of those innings and really use certain guys in the high leverage spot. So those are things to definitely consider, especially with the prospects, as you mentioned, too, guys getting opportunities, even if it's, a few times a week or defensive replacement, pinch runners, whatever it might be, might actually bring strategy back to the game. Some of the strategy we've lost.
All these pitchers want to throw 100 miles an hour is the problem. They all want to throw 103, 104, 105 miles an hour, and there's no science to pitching no more. What happened? I want to see Greg Maddux back. I don't want to see a 105-mile fastball. Bring back the science of sports, and a lot of these pitchers need to start doing that and stop trying to break this radar gun. And I think that attributes to why pitchers' arms are they're dead. Because they're just overthrowing so much.
Yeah, 94 miles per hour, let's say 95 is still very effective if you can look.
Exactly.
You don't need to throw 99.
Or heck,
you don't
today,
need to throw that hard.
Be like Kyle Hendricks. Kyle Hendricks is a pretty good pitcher. Granted, he's not getting the run support, but still, the guy rebels against that notion and goes off speed, and he's proven to be very, very effective.
Look at Adam Wainwright at his age. He's still getting it done. Kyle Hendricks is a knuckleball pitcher.
He pitched in your 50s like the Negroes.
Yeah, right. Eric, your thought on the increased roster size?
I like it.
Be back at 26. Yeah, you like it?
I like it. I mean, keep it what it is right now. See what happens. Don't go too aggressive with it because you're giving people, I think that it should be up to the clubs whether they choose to have more hitters or have more pitchers.
Would you want it up to 28 then, like it was at, or do you think it should stay at 26?
Keep it at 28. See what happens. I think it's a great choice. I mean, you give those promising prospects an opportunity to stay with the big club instead of just having to wait for a guy to get hurt to bring them up and to see what they have. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it what it is right now. I think in the future, do we want to explore 30? Perhaps. But right now, let's just see what happens with it right now. I think
I'd love if they kept it at 28, but it's back down to 26 now. And Eric, you and I are Yankee fans, so we're having this conversation now. We'll use the example. Clark Schmidt and Miguel Andujar both deserve to be in Major League Baseball right now. Schmidt pitched very well. Andujar was crushing AAA, and they're unfortunately not able to be in the big leagues because the Yankees have a deep roster right now. And these guys who shouldn't be in the minors anymore are stuck there because there's just not enough spots on a major league roster. That's just one team's example.
I think, I think having it go up to 28 and see what happens. And then kind of shrink it down around like what they're doing now. I like that because those top prospects get an opportunity to compete and with some actual action.
Yeah.
Not a spring training game where the guy's more wilder than Nuke Lelouch.
Well, what do you guys think of when they have September call-ups? I mean, they've changed it a little bit to the fact that you can call up to the 40 players, I believe, on the 40-man roster, but you can only dress 26 per game. It used to be it was like a free-for-all. You could have 35 different guys in the game at one point. Now it's not, but I like having deep rosters like that. Maybe not 40. That's a bit of a stretch, but September call-ups are always intriguing to me, whether you were trying to win, whether you were just, in the middle of the pack, whether you're a boring team kind of looking towards next year. Getting an opportunity to see guys you don't always see is always interesting to me. George, we'll go back to you, or Scott. I mean, you haven't gone to say anything. Do you have anything to add on this before we go to George?
Well, as a matter of fact, I do have a couple little things. I remember a long time ago when the rosters were at 25 and the owners and the players were at it, they reduced them to 24 to save payroll. Remember those days, George?
Oh, yeah.
We had the labor wars that were going to 24, and the owners thought they could pull it, and they did. They saved some money, actually, on their bottom line, their payroll. But stay in consistent. consistent with the theme with L Square, okay, Landers talk, I personally would like to see it at 28. I really would, because I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to have that extra bat or two. And don't forget that you've got the universal designated hitter all the way around. So, I wouldn't mind that extra pitcher or extra hitter. What was so weird is on Sunday, I'm watching the Miami Marlins take on the Seattle Mariners. And this is the first time that I've ever seen an American League team played a National League team utilizing the designated hitter. Now, there was no media availability for Don Mattingly that day. I went on Sunday. They didn't have him, or I would have popped him with that question. Yeah. I'm sure at some point I probably will. Give me time. I'll come up with one. But it was very different to see the American League rules implemented in the National League part. So I would definitely say 28 is fine. I don't think 30 is I think that's
it might sound crazy, but teams having a third catcher would actually be very interesting to me, because sometimes you see teams hold back on pinch running for a catcher in like the 7th or 8th inning as some strategy, because you worry about what happens if your backup catcher takes a foul ball off the head and has to leave the game. A lot of teams don't carry emergency catchers. So if you're going to expand rosters, having an additional catcher at times, as there are teams that were carrying 3. I believe the White Sox and the Blue Jays were 2 of those teams carrying 3 when they had the
Tigers too.
Rosters. Yeah, so
no question about it, Lou.
Yeah.
You know what? Whether you guys know it or not, I played the game for 6 years, and I was a catcher. So if anybody can relate to that position more, some of the stunts that I pulled back there behind the plate, I wouldn't really encourage a lot of young tykes out there doing it. The way I used to manipulate the umpire, the hitter, I played every mind game imaginable. All you guys would be surprised. And some of my favorite interviews over the years covering MLB have been with catchers. So, again, Lou, you're right on target. I think with your 28 players, you do what you want, but I think that third catcher should easily be implemented. Speaking from a catcher myself, I'm with you all the way. So
yeah, well, also just you have certain situations where you might use a guy who's incredibly quick, an incredible base runner, but he's an average fielder, very weak with the bat. You want to be able to use that guy in the late innings, and I'll use my Yankees as an example because it's just the easiest for me. I watch every single game. Giancarlo Stanton gets a walk in the 8th inning. You're going to want to pinch run with Tim LeCastro, one of the fastest guys in the league. Stanton basically walks around the bases. But if that lineup spot comes up again, you don't want LeCastro hitting in a big spot. So if you have these extra bench spots, you can go back to your bench and use another hitter rather than having LeCastro come up hitting cleanup in the 9th or the 10th inning potentially. And as a manager, you have to really weigh, is it worth pinch running for Stanton in the 7th in a close game when all of a sudden he might come up with 2nd and 3rd and 2 outs, and it's Tim LeCastro instead of Giancarlo Stanton. And that happens in every situation, in every city, on every team. So having extra bats, having guys with certain skills, a defensive replacement, a pinch runner, a third catcher, really adds strategy into the game, something we have lost for such a long time now, with no DH, with everything being the universal DH, everything being a home run, not as much hitting and running. I think the more the merrier with players and just utilizing different guys for different situations. I'd pay a guy $1 million to be a pinch runner that can steal 20 bases for you.
Well, you really want to bring out the H card, Lou. Okay, now this might be before your time. You always say 80s and above. You're all right. But George and I can tell you a guy by the name of Herb Williams was a guy that was a specialty type of player that you're referring to.
Herb Washington, I believe it was, Scott.
Oh, that's right. Herb Washington.
Yeah, Washington. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And you're right. Charlie Finley, Oakland Athletics. I mean, it was a great opportunity to have a guy that he could have on that team, on that roster, that could steal that base, make things happen. Like you said earlier, Lou, I mean, the September call-ups, I just wanted to put my 2 cents in. I've always been a fan of that. It gives you, the fans, a chance to see some of the young minor league stars, especially if you're lagging in the standings. You're not even contending. At least you're getting a chance to see some of your minor leaguers in September. Yeah, the whole thing's those guys is going to come down to money. If these owners don't want those 2 extra roster spots, they're going to fight to not have it because of payroll. The teams that can't afford it, I mean, could be the ones that block this. But I agree with all of you. 28, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I think we have a consensus there that 28's away. But again, we're also talking about a collective bargaining agreement
George.
where the one thing that was not even brought up in this thing so far is that there's no ceiling floor about how much money he had to spend. And I know that we've talked about it from time to time, but yeah, you know what?
Yeah, well, Rick thinks there needs to be a cap. I think there needs to be I think there needs to be a floor. And Eric, I don't remember if you were with floor, ceiling, or somewhere in the middle.
I've said cap.
Soft cap for me.
I think a soft cap, you give the playing field becomes a little more even. And George, Herb Washington, wasn't that guy that Charlie Finley wasn't that guy that Charlie Finley had everybody in the stands chanting "run"?
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny how we're talking about the Oakland A's. So you want to talk about the perfect segue that we're talking about? Was it Herb Washington, Bert Campaneris, all these speedsters? Well, here's the part of the show, guys, okay, where it gets real ugly, and I mean ugly. Okay, so let me set it out there for you, and then we could have a lot of fun. I know Rick Curti's blushing like Gomer Pyle over this one. We're salivating, I can tell. You get this done, this guy.
What do you think I got green on?
Oh, he's salivating. So
I like that show too, Rick.
So let me go ahead and put it out there, folks. Okay, the Oakland A's versus the Tampa Bay Rays, two marquee franchises, not. Okay, but I got to tell you, they're thrifty when they're contending. But 2,488 fans on Monday night against the old Rays. They lost 6-1 to them. They're averaging 9,016 per home game. And the A's are 10-13, and they're on a 4-game losing streak. It's safe to say that A's president David Kaval sees a writing on the wall. And, there was a recent series with the Bay Bridge where, over at Oracle Park, had 32,898 fans for the Giants. That is the San Francisco Giants. And you talk about 30,410, which is, I believe, 13 times more than came to Oakland on Monday. I gave you a lot of numbers there, okay? But the reality is for you lottery players out there that want to play the numbers 2488, okay? Just remember where you heard it, okay, from us. So, Mr. Expansion Curti, I know you're salivating at this one here. But it's safe to say Oakland and baseball is in deep trouble. So go ahead.
They're done. I mean, they've been done for a long time, and this is more of the writing on the wall. Now we can call them the Oakland Pathetics instead of the Oakland Athletics because that's what they have become. Pathetic. You can see why Bob Melvin left. You can see why they got rid of everybody. I'm sure Olsen's glad to be in Atlanta, and it's just inevitable when it happens, because it's going to happen. And so that attendance is putrid. I'll put it in context. When I was in Gastonia for a Honey Hunters game on Sunday, they had 2,300 people at a game, and that's a 5,000-seat stadium. Okay? Oakland Stadium is like over 70,000. It's like Municipal Stadium all over again with the Indians. So it's sad. The fans know it. They're angry. They're boycotting. They already know they're going to lose their third professional sports team in Oakland. And whose fault is that? It is completely the fault of the city of Oakland, who have absolutely just let everybody down. The Raiders, then Golden State. I know that they didn't go far, but they're in another place in San Francisco. And now Oakland is going to, or Las Vegas is going to get two of Oakland's professional teams. And I guess all those Oakland fans are going to have to be Giant fans now. So it's sad to see that happen, but it's on the city of Oakland's fault. That's whose fault it is.
Why don't they just move to a minor league park though, so it looks like their stadium's full?
Well,
your boy they probably won't allow it.
They probably won't go there either.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have a stadium that only seats about 7,000 and you get 4,500, 5,000, you look pretty full.
You should. I mean, they're doing that with the Coyotes in the NHL. Why not?
No.
The Coyotes have been a disaster franchise in the NHL for God knows how long. Despite Wayne Gretzky being a face of that team for a while, everybody, not even the great one, could bring that team from the dumpster.
Yeah, they had Shane Doan. He was good.
Yeah, you
got
know
in.
what though, Eric? I have to implement this one because George and I know this really well. You talk about the Arizona Coyotes. Oh my God! When I lived there back in '99 and 2002, I covered a couple of their games. They played at the America West Arena where the Suns played. I ripped that franchise from here all the way to Antarctica, and it's safe to say the PR guy and I went to 2 games and never went back again. He didn't like my content. He didn't want me back, and I told him, you know what? Your team should have played at the Arizona Memorial Coliseum. George Eichorn met his assistant when he was at Anaheim over at Joe Louis. So what did he tell you, George? That the guy overreacted a a bit, but they have
he sure did.
They need to
sure
move
did.
to Houston. That's what the Coyotes
Yeah,
need to
but
do.
let's not go
Move
there,
to
Rick.
Houston.
Yeah, no. Let's stay on
Let's stay
context
with
here.
baseball, and
Yep.
Oakland is
Yep.
Oakland, and I agree with you. If Detroit, where I'm from, bankruptcy. You guys all know what a terrible situation we had in here, but yet we've got 3 new stadiums downtown. Okay, don't tell me Oakland can't put this thing to rest if they wanted to. Like you said, Rick, they've had many opportunities to do so, and they haven't done it. So I'm done with Oakland for baseball. And like you guys are saying, it's their own damn fault. I mean, Detroit was able to get a new Ford Field, a new Comerica Park, and a new Little Caesars Arena, all within walking distance of each other. And they went in bankruptcy.
You know, I'm amazed, Eric, that you even brought
Absolutely.
the Coyotes up. I can't believe you did it. I'm proud of you.
I remember them.
Yeah,
But-
but I always thought
You
at
know
that
what?
time they.
I actually bought this hat at the Arizona Coyote Stadium a few years ago. I went to see a Leafs game there,
Oh, did you really?
and the Leafs got shot out. I believe it was dreadful, but we had a lot of beer and we had a lot of fun. It was for a buddy's bachelor party. So
can imagine.
It was good. But yes, this hat is actually from that Arizona Coyote Stadium.
Well, I rarely ever buy tickets, but I was with my father-in-law and my brother-in-law, and they call it the Gila River Arena. And, you know, they were paying their rent there anyways. The Coyotes, to me, are just awful. I could do a whole show on them. Of course, I would never see them again.
All right.
But that stadium that they have right in Glendale, adjacent to the Cardinal Stadium, is a great place. It really is. But to me, I was ahead of my time when I hammered them. The guy didn't want nothing to do with me. I didn't want nothing to do with him. And George and I talked to his assistant. And what did he say, George? That you talk about an overreaction.
Yeah.
He couldn't handle the truth. So, yeah, I'm with you. That to me, I remember when Oakland left the first time to L.A. and everybody acclimated to the 49ers. And I think that's what's going to happen is a lot of those Oakland fans are going to convert over to Giant fans. And it is what it is. But, you know, 2,488 fans. And I remember years ago, the Tampa Bay Rays played over at the Disney complex. Remember the Wide World of Sports for a while to try to play a few of their games. So it's not unprecedented. Not that they would do it and be much better. And of course,
Weren't they also going to split their home games between Tampa and Montreal for a while
that was
too?
awful.
They didn't end
Yeah,
up
I
doing
know.
it, but
Yeah.
that was one of the stupidest things I've ever heard.
Oh, I'm with you all the way there,
Wait
Lou.
till their lease expires. See what happened with Tampa.
Well, we can at least say one thing. Whether you like Manfred or not, at least he put the kibosh on that one. So
Yeah, that would
he
have been.
did. So
that'd have
Well,
been a
didn't
disaster
the
in making.
Expos in one of their last years do something weird about, like, wasn't there some sort of connection they had with the Red Sox, maybe similar ownership, or there was
Yeah,
something
John
with
Henry.
Puerto Rico and with Fenway Park and the Expos or something? Maybe I'm
different-
mistaken.
Different. Well, it was a different time though. Keep in mind though that stadium. I'm shocked nobody died going to that stadium, and second of all, you know, John Henry at one point did own the Expos, and he prior to taking over the Red Sox and doing what remains to be the last franchise swap. They the thing though about it though was, you know, that stadium is a health hazard to everybody that walks in there from everything. I'm shocked nobody has died in there. The thing was though that they were in such a bad shape as a franchise that MLB had no choice but to let them do it. The Rays, you know, despite their
Did
stadium,
they serve poutine there at least?
I would actually, I think at one point they did, but at least the Expos.
I would hope so. I mean, that was probably the only good thing about going there, other than seeing Vlad Guerrero Sr., Pedro at one
mascot.
point, Randy Johnson at one point.
Pedro Martinez.
They had some really good players, made some
Also,
terrible trades.
Also, Gary Carter early on. Also, but yeah, they at
Larry
least had
Walker,
a nice.
right?
At least, yes, Larry Walker. At least their
Shit,
mascot
Braves.
was at least fun to watch, though, because their mascot was.
I don't know what
mascot,
I still
their
don't even know what an expo is.
No, what they did. Here's what they did. Here's what they did. They had this really big orange guy, not too dissimilar to Philly Fanatic, and I'd probably say that mascot's a little more savage than what Philly Fanatic ever.
His name
could
was
be.
Youpie or something.
Yes, his name is Youpie. Youpie's now
Yeah.
now he's part of the Montreal. He's with the Montreal Canadiens nowadays. But Youpie was quite the savage. A little more than the Philly Fanatic. I mean, Philly Fanatic.
You know what? I pulled up a picture. He kind of looks like the color of the Cheetos guy.
He is. He is. I mean,
Yeah.
At least he's. I mean, well, at least nobody wanted to throw him on the ground as badly as Tommy Lasorda did to the Philly Fanatic.
Well, I think
He's
the-
in the mascot
hosted-
Hall of Fame, guys.
Well, I
Yeah.
think Oakland's
Montreal
mascot's
hosted a
an
World's
elephant.
Fair. World's
did.
Fair in 1967, and it was called an exposition. So I think
Yes.
that's maybe where they got the name from.
That's
It
what.
was the
Yes, that is.
67 World's Fair was hosted by Montreal.
I hated
Yes.
their when I first saw them. I couldn't understand their logo. It looked like it said ELB, and my brother's like, "No, it's N." You know, I just that whole organization was a disaster, and we could thank Jeffrey Loria for torpedoing that organization.
Well, Jeffrey Loria has torpedoed the Marlins too, so whatever.
Yeah, well, he's the
He destroyed.
Bernie Madoff of Major League Baseball. That's
Jeffrey
what he is.
Loria was the volatile non-winning version, non-spending version. He was all volatile like George Steinbrenner was for the 80s.
Yeah,
And the 80s and the
he's
90s.
unimproved.
But he never won and never spent money. He just had all the volatileness of him.
Well,
where-
he inherited a team, Eric, that won a world championship. And when you think of all the things that Mike Ilitch did for the city of Detroit, didn't get one, it's one thing. And then if we even take Jeffrey Loria's ownership, and he let Joe Girardi go after winning the Manager of the Year.
Yeah,
Thank you.
'cause he
Thank you.
didn't
Thank
get
you
along
for
with
that.
him.
Thank you for that. Because without Girardi, I don't think the Yankees win another World Series.
Well, okay, well, there you go. But you're talking about dysfunction, Eric, Lou, Rick, and George. How on earth does an owner fire the Manager of the Year getting in an argument with him behind the plate?
With
those
David
guys?
Johnson resigned when he won the Manager of the Year with the Orioles.
Yeah,
Davey Johnson
that's
also
one
is.
thing. But Rick, hold on for a minute, okay? When you talk about Loria going after Girardi the way he did after winning the Manager of the Year, that to me was
Well, he's a jerk.
Low
I mean, look
class.
what he did with Florida. The taxpayers had to spend $600 million on a new stadium, and then he gets the stadium, he trades away all the good players.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah,
he's the
well-
Bernie Madoff of Major League Baseball.
Well, don't get me started. I tell you, I wish that stadium was a little further where I'm at. I'm not going to get into that another time.
Well, here's the thing about it, though. I mean, yes, that was just wrong what Luria did to Girardi. Girardi actually did a pretty good job for the 1 year he was in Florida,
Right.
but his loss with the Yankees gain. But the thing about him is like the guy is just, everybody says George Steinbrenner was difficult, to work with, which rightfully so. Ask all his managers and PR men.
Just watch Seinfeld for a little bit.
Yes. Well, at least he loved at least he loved George though. But at least he had a soft spot there. But the thing about it was George cared about the franchise. The Ilitches cared very much about the Tigers and the city of Detroit themselves, to the point they're to almost to a fault. But the thing was, Luria never cared. Luria was just in it because he knew he could make money with Major League Baseball. He never cared. He somehow, I mean, 03, they accidentally won a World Series. Same with, and 97, they legitimately had a good team. A lot of good players on that team. Leland was managing, Dombrowski with the GM. But the thing was, Luria never cared. Luria never cared much about anybody except himself. That's his lasting legacy in Florida. And
But that 1997 team, if I remember right, was owned by Wayne Huizinga, not Jeffrey Loria. I believe Jeffrey Loria owned the 2003 team, and Wayne Huizinga but had bought a lot of players, and it's amazing too. They won that championship over at Joe Robbie Stadium, and Wayne Huizinga didn't mind spending. He's a reason the Florida Panthers have a franchise.
Well, I
So,
thought
you know,
about I was thinking I forgot I more associated Wayne Huizinga with the Miami Dolphins. That's more or
well,
less.
I mean, Wayne Huizenga owns everything, or did at one point own everything in the market before they ultimately got sold. He owned the Dolphins, he owned the Panthers initially, and then of course he owned the Marlins. So he was involved until he ultimately sold all those properties.
That Marlins team was really good though.
Yeah, they
Devon
were.
White, Gary Sheffield,
Oh
Moises
yeah.
Alou, beginning of Cliff Floyd, Edgar Renteria,
Le'Veon Hernandez.
Luis Castillo, Bobby Bonilla, Devon
They were
Hernandez,
loaded.
Al Leiter, Kevin Brown, Antonio Alfonseca,
Craig Counsell
Rob
had
Hen.
the most important hit in the World Series. That sack fly.
So
Yeah, it's funny how you say
they
that.
were actually a good team.
They were great.
And
You know
yet,
what? They
And
actually
Bob
had
Bonilla still
Luis
getting paid.
Castillo. Luis Castillo was a member of both. I think he might Jeff Conine and Luis Castillo were a member of both of those Marlins World Series.
Was it Juan Pierre? I think.
The second one in
Right.
2003.
Right. Okay. And the irony is how you guys bring up Craig Counsell. I lived in Arizona when the Diamondbacks won the World Series, and I lived here in South Florida when they ended up winning in Miami, and the common denominator was Craig Counsell. And yet the irony is here I am going tomorrow, day game, seeing the Diamondbacks and the Marlins. You talk about putting things in perspective. You guys just make my life very easy.
Hey, he
manages. It works out.
He manages the Brewers now,
and he's doing a good job there.
Oh yeah,
utility player.
He's probably the best manager he's the best manager they've ever had.
I no doubt about that. And he'll be there for as long as he wants to be there. But
he's a Wisconsin native, and he lives in Whitefish Bay.
Yeah,
he's better than Tom Treblehorn.
No. Yeah, no.
There's a name from the past.
No, Rick. Hell no.
I had to put that in. Sorry, I was just having some fun.
That's all right. Well, hey, everybody.
At least I got a Major League Baseball team.
We'll get one soon.
Folks, you're listening and watching 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. I have the dream team tonight: George Eichorn, Rick Curti, Mr. Opinion, Eric Katz, Concrete Dump, as in Olympic Stadium, which Eric's very outspoken about, and elsewhere, Lou Landers, the man who has baseball. You know what? I love talking baseball with you, Lou, whether we're doing a show or not. Because you know what, if anybody knows his stuff, you do. In fact, all you guys bring something to the table. But Lou, when we do our chats every week, he gets my mind really stimulated like no other person ever does. So with that said, what a great show it's been, having the opportunity to talk about 4 interesting topics. Miguel, Cabrera, Trevor Bauer was pretty strong. And, of course, the roster reduction will always leave debate. And last but not least, the Oakland A's pathetic situation. So
super excited, Scott, for a topic next week. Just a little teaser for next week. The running up of the score. Is it actually something that should ever be discussed? Is it something that people are actually right about, that people shouldn't be doing it? All I can say is it's going to be a very, very fun topic to debate and discuss next week.
Well, you brought it up with me. I'm totally sold on the idea. And it's just one of those topics that I think deserves more than 10, 12 minutes of conversation.
Yeah, really that and all the unwritten rules in Major League Baseball.
And you know what?
I like that.
I'll even reinforce it a whole lot here because, you know what? I get a front row seat to watch you and Eric go at it next week with a 4-man crew talking about this subject. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. So, so a good teaser running up the score. 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morgan, Roth Motor City, Madmouth. Once again, please be joined by George Eichorn. And by the way, a programming note, Fire Up Michigan debuts Friday, May 6, 2022 with myself, George Eichorn, and Mark Mancini. So hope you can join us for that. Mark Mancini and I launched Fire Up Florida last Friday night with Greg Fuchs, who does real well, and we do a lot of good things there. So some things to look for. All right, with that said, guys, Rick, we're going to let you lead off since lead off is a very popular term in baseball. Let people know how they get a hold of you.
You can find me on my website at www.charlottebats.com. I'm also on Facebook at Charlotte MLB. I'm also on there at Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm on Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm on Instagram at Charlotte Bats. And I'm also on LinkedIn at Rick Curti. And my email address, if you want to contact me, is cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com. And you go to our website and sign our petition to bring Major League Baseball to Charlotte, North Carolina.
And that'll be, and just a little teaser down the road, we will talk about expansion down the road as well. I know, well, one of the subjects we'll talk about will be Nashville down the road, so stay with us, folks. And then we'll bring Charlotte back in the equation. All right, concrete, dumb, Olympic Stadium, Eric Katz, put it out there, let people know where they get you.
You can follow me on Twitter at Sports Team News, and I also write for Belly Up Sports covering Wisconsin Badgers football.
George Eichorn?
You can reach me at georgeeichorn@gmail.com. I also am the author of a book on Detroit sports broadcasters that's available from Scott's website in South Florida. And I will autograph your copy if you really want one.
Yeah, okay. And who's in that book, by the way?
Oh, yeah, a young man that's moderating here, Mr. Morgenroth. Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
You're in the book.
Is it an original photo?
They're all original.
Yeah, they're all original, pal. No, this is a good book for those of you that don't have it. It's a really good book. You'll learn a lot about Detroit. And L Square, Lou Landers, go for it. Take it away before I wrap her up.
Check me out at Landers Talks on Twitter, drroto.com. I'm the content director for baseball over there, fantasy baseball, daily fantasy sports, baseball betting, everything baseball you can find over there, drroto.com. Check me out on Sirius XM 9:30 a.m. fantasy sports channel there on Sundays. And you can also find me on Sports Byline USA and the Armed Forces Network every Friday night and replayed on Saturday night as well. And of course, Tuesday nights right here, 108 Stitches.
Baseball talk, my friend. 108 Stitches baseball talk. And obviously, Lou, you know what? When I talk about a right-hand man, left-hand man, in my opinion, I got the Rolls Royce with you being that. And you guys are also Rolls Royces and Mercedes as well. But you know what, Lou? Having you alongside here, the guy that can take over when I want, just to sit here and watch it all, to me is a blast. I'll say one thing, and then I'll get to my stuff. I'll never forget the time recently I watched Stephen A. Smith, saw J.J. Redick and somebody else talk back and forth, and he got to take a little time off on his show and eat his breakfast. So now I usually eat dinner before I come on here, but I know that if I haven't eaten, all I got to do is let Lou Landers take over. I won't have a problem getting a meal in with this guy here. So with that said, okay, my name is Scott Morgenroth, Motor City Madmouth, CEO, publisher, South Florida Tribune. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. The website is www.southfloridatribune.com. You want to listen to this show here, do so on iHeartRadio. Subscribe, doesn't cost you nothing. And if you want to see all of us, okay, go to South Florida Tribune YouTube channel and go ahead and subscribe for free, $0. Okay, and last but not least, you want to get a hold of me on Twitter at Tribune South Gets It Done. So on behalf of my dream team, and I really do mean it from my mind and my heart, George Eichorn, a longtime co-host, Rick Curti, Mr. Opinion, a broadcaster who is becoming a broadcaster with every show, and Eric Katz is the original concrete dump. Nobody will ever replace that. And Lou Landers, what can I tell you, Lou? You're the best, too. This is Scott Morgenroth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. We will catch you the next time. God bless everybody, and please share this broadcast with a lot of people. We know that not only will you be entertained by the information, we want to make sure that our opinions are exactly where they are, right on point with what we've got to do. So next week, running up the score. Meanwhile, tonight, we're running out of here. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.